Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, question for you. When was the last time you questioned what you were doing as a job? Well, I can tell you that the answer for me is, it was not that long ago. Because today I want to talk to you about having a midlife crisis and why it might not be a bad thing at all. Yes, you heard me correctly. I want to tell you that actually having a midlife crisis might be good for you. And I'm sure that pretty much goes against everything that you've been told before, because if you question what you're doing, it means that you won't stay stagnant. At least that's all in your thinking. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, Brendan, are you smoking your socks? Well, if that is the case, then why don't we just dive straight in? So what are the first things that come to mind when you think of a midlife crisis? Sports cars and men wrapped in cycling lycra? Unfinished household projects and even in some circumstances, perhaps affairs? Sure, they're all cliched, but if these images leap to mind when you hear the words midlife crisis, you're not alone. The thing about cliches, though, is they are all mostly based on fact. Yes, I hate to break it to you, but in this case, the facts are staggering and not in a good way. I mean, in a recent survey, more than half of the respondents to a poll said that a midlife crisis is a very real, gut-wrenching, depressing experience that we all go through at one time or another. Oh, shit. You might think, it'll never happen to me. But sooner or later, I think it just might. Suddenly you're questioning everything you've devoted to the last couple of decades, and all of your carefully laid life plans don't quite seem to make any sense anymore. You start acting impulsively, making big changes, wondering if you'll ever regain your sense of purpose and self-worth. Luckily, you are not alone, because plenty of others before you have experienced similar crises and made it through stronger on the other end. Before we get to know how to deal with a midlife crisis, I want to show you what a midlife crisis looked for me. Well, to be honest, it started with a quarter-life crisis back in 2012. About 15 months before, I had re-entered the world of accountancy, exciting I know, by joining Deloitte. I had been contracted for about 2 years and decided that it was time to get back into the world of permanent employment. You see, there is a saying that I came up with during this period which summed up why I'd gone into practice. You contract for cash, you go permanent for progression. Now, I was tired of booking meeting rooms and taking minutes. Yes, it was good money, actually very good money in fact, but I was really bored. And the contracting thing for me had run its course. So I returned to the world of permanent employment, full of the joys of spring. Well, looking forward to learning and growing as a person at least. Expectations were high. Sadly, this didn't last that long. As I've subsequently learned, a quarter-life crisis was sneaking up on me. So 15 months after joining, being deeply unhappy, I made a pretty big change. At that point, I didn't quite know how it would turn out, but I knew that a change was needed. Whether that be good, bad, or indifferent, staying as I was not an option. Making a big change like this is easy to say, I know, but it is very hard to do in practice. But within the space of 3 weeks, I quit my very stable job at one of the top accountancy firms in the world, started a business, and bought a classic sports car. If this doesn't tick all the boxes of midlife crisis, then I don't know what does. Little did I know at the time, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Not only had I managed to break free of the corporate world and the stranglehold that jobs can have, the weight of the world had just lifted off my shoulders. Once you break the bungee cord of fear that keeps us from leaving our jobs, it is truly liberating. Having the time to do what mattered to me most and following my gut in pursuing the business was a freedom that I was not previously afforded. Now, if I had not made that change because of having an early midlife crisis, then, to be quite honest, I wouldn't be sat where I am today. I love what I do as a job. Leading in the data space, empowering people to be their best and continually working on personal development really floats my boat. These are all critical to my well-being. Ultimately, having the confidence to know that if a job is making me unhappy, then it's time to change, all came about from the early midlife crisis. Remember, no job is worth the Sunday evening blues, no matter what anybody tells you. Now, I would be lying to you if I said that it did all turn out as I hoped. There were no rainbows and unicorns as the business ultimately failed, but that's one of life's lessons. Rich tapestry, I think they say. I have learned not to be afraid of failure, although I wouldn't go as far to say I embrace it, as I still hate failing, but I know it happens. As I sit here now in 2022, having turned the ripe old age of 41, I am legitimately middle-aged. I mean, at the age of 40 odd or so, you want to do something that makes you happy and provides meaning. In addition to paying the bills, for those of us at this age, it's often not just about climbing the ladder or just proving yourself anymore. But being this age does have some advantages. I mean, I can walk around head to toe covered in lycra, proclaiming to be a mammal. That means a middle-aged man in lycra, which is always liberating. And if you haven't tried it, I think you should. Now, the midlife crisis is something that may happen in all of our careers, so it is certainly not something to be ashamed about. The choice is what we decide to do about it. You can choose to use it to your advantage, to advance your career, and ultimately your happiness, or unlike so many that might choose to ignore it, their career confusion and stuff it down in fear only gets worse and worse and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, recognizing it for what it is, a sign that you've been evolving and that your current situation no longer suits you. So instead of treating this as a life change and as a crisis and something to avoid, shouldn't you welcome it and plan for it? Well, I believe so. That's why I recommend these 5 actions to help navigate the dilemma of an early or midlife crisis. Number 1, start a career curiosity journal. It's easy to put your education behind you once you enter the professional world, but becoming curious means getting in touch with your inquisitive side. You might find yourself asking, what is this all about? Or why isn't this better? I want to know more about that, or any other questions that kind of pique your interest. Re-engaging a sense of curiosity about the world around you is hugely insightful. I mean, on the flip side, are you passionate about running but never go running? Do you claim to be passionate about cooking but never cook? If so, stop fooling yourself. Whatever you actually spend your time doing is a clue to finding work you'll enjoy. Keep a journal of all these things. You begin to notice about yourself. You might be surprised about what you find. Now, this isn't about making whole grand-scale gestures and deciding that you're going to go off and become a monk and living a life of a hermit. It's about noticing what's around you, what piques your interest, and if you are going to make a change, at least based it on some fact. Now, number 2 is setting a goal. Ultimately, goal for action, but we're setting a goal. Now that you've made a note of what you're attracted to and where your aversions are, follow your inclinations. Take baby steps, or giant leaps, whichever floats your boat the most. The important thing is that you set a concrete goal. For example, your goal might be set up 1 informal interview per month in an industry you're curious about. For me, it would be fitness tech. So those technology companies in the fitness world which are trying to be disruptors. Alternatively, attend 2 local networking events in industries you're drawn to but don't fully understand. For me, this would be in the blockchain world, or distributed ledger technology, as it is formerly known, all within the wrapper of crypto, which I think is highly fascinating, but can be a bit like the Wild West. Number 3 is getting some work experience. Now, volunteering with organisations that reflect your curiosities and passions. I mean, do you want to really care about the environment? I mean, one way to let that shine for you in your interview is to talk about your volunteering experience that you've had with an environmental organisation. I mean, it just shows your personality, enthusiasm and commitment to a cause. All valuable traits in any employee. I mean, we used to do it at school, and I'm sure you've done it at different parts of your life. Volunteering is one of the best ways to find out what you want to do, and it also makes you are more enticing to potential employers down the road. If you put yourself out there, you've given your time freely, and you want to learn, and it's a bit philanthropic, I think this is only a good thing. Now, number 4 is all about figuring out your cultural fit. Now, I'm a huge believer and passionate person about culture, and this is hugely important. Now, in a world where employers hire for personality fit as much as your skill set, job seekers today need to show that they not only can get the work done, but they also fit in the culture of an organisation. It is easy to say, but it is hard to do. Culture is one of those things that is best described as how people act when nobody's looking. Difficult to do in an interview, but if you are able to determine what it is that you're looking for and the culture that best works for you, and turn down those that don't, this puts you in a very advantageous position. So even though you might be going through a career crisis, why not use it to your advantage? Now, number 5 is one of my favourites, and it's reading for career inspiration. If you like the idea of finding inspiration in books, you are not alone. Reading, I think, is hands down one of the best ways to pique your curiosity and understand what you might be happiest doing with your career. Now, to help you, here are a few books you should check out to help answer the "what if I don't know what I want" question, which is, to be fair, one of the biggest things that comes up when you're having a mid or early life crisis. In his book, The Icarus Deception, Seth Godin writes, if you've announced that you have no talent in anything, then you're hiding. I mean, we all have innate and learned talents. I mean, when we deny these abilities, we hide them from ourselves. And that also includes fulfilling work opportunities. Even Elizabeth Gilbert writes in her book Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, arguing for your limitations and you get to keep them. What limitations do you set for yourself, and ultimately do you want to avoid living out your purpose? Robert S. Kaplan's book, What You're Really Meant to Do, a roadmap for reaching your unique potential, offers a clear map for narrowing your interests and talents. I mean, following your curiosity is the best way to go. It's also simpler and more realistic than following some loosely based, defined passion. I mean, we should all be following our passion, shouldn't we? If you're interested in following your passion, I would check out this video here where I ask, should you do what you love as a job? Might be quite insightful. Now, while it's known as the midlife crisis for a reason, there are many positives to this stage of life. It's naturally a period of reflection, a time to take stock of your past decisions, and ultimately what's led you to your life up to that point. Just like the Talking Heads song, Once in a Lifetime, you may ask yourself, how did I get here? One of the beautiful things about questions is they can lead you to answers. When you experience a midlife crisis, it can feel like standing on the very edge of a yawning chasm with nothing standing between you and your mortality. Wow, that feels a bit deep, doesn't it? But that precipice can lead to exciting opportunities and ways of seeing the world. New perspectives and experience you never thought possible when you were thinking inside the neat boundaries of your previous life can now be opened up. But please, 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 don't beat yourself up about it. Don't worry about the midlife crisis. Just embrace it. I believe it will be far more beneficial. Because that's it. That's all I've got time to today. But please don't fight the midlife crisis. Embrace it, because if you like this video, I would highly recommend this one here, where I talk about should you accept a counteroffer when looking to leave your company. Now, all very relevant if you are going through a midlife crisis, I think, because I think you'll find it super helpful. But with that, have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.